mega do.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know you told me many times, and we've known each other for a while now. And I was just trying to figure out how to say your name again because I know the spelling, but
Yeah.
Ella is just much, much easier.
Yeah.
So
That's kind of how I started it, and you're not alone. Even, my whole life, it's been that same thing. So you're not alone.
awesome. Okay. So born what, September 16th, 83?
Yep. I was born in Portland, Oregon.
Uh-huh.
Um, my dad's from Nigeria. My mom's American. So I was raised kind of with that kind of split background. My dad was a huge soccer player growing up, but when he came over to the US, he came over for schooling. And so that was like kind of his number one growing up, was the grades and wanting to have basically putting yourself in position to be successful career wise, because coming from his background from Nigeria, that was the way out. Education, being a doctor, being a lawyer, being an engineer, like that was the way out. So
Yep.
as a kid, that's kind of like how I was raised. He was an entrepreneur. He started out with 7-Elevens, then acquired property, acquired apartment buildings, and kind of like grew it over time. So as a kid, raking leaves and doing things around these properties, but you don't really understand everything that's going on. But that's kind of what I was doing. And then in the summers at 7-Eleven, counting deposits in the back. And I mean, even when I was like 14, I was checking people out at the counter, unless they had beer or cigarettes. I had to go get somebody that was over 18 to do that.
Yeah.
But so like that's kind of the household I was raised in. Multi-sport athlete as a kid: baseball, basketball, soccer, track, hockey. Basically, if it was something competitive related, I was in it.
Oh,
And
hockey?
hockey, yeah, everything, man,
Wow.
everything.
Okay. That was like I knew the baseball, I knew basketball, and obviously football, but didn't read that anywhere.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah,
And
hockey, all that.
you're pretty successful at sports in high school, correct? Like
Yeah,
yeah, for baseball, you led it in baseball, basketball, and football
and track, yeah.
and track. Okay.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And good grades?
Not good grades, not the best grades in high school, which was kind of interesting, right? So in high school, like, I mean, school's kind of always not hard, but it was like something that you had to do. Really,
Yeah.
I was obviously interested in sports, but I would do my schoolwork. I was probably like a 2.8 or 2.9, 2.7, nothing, nothing great. But once I got to college is when school really took off for me, because once you kind of pick your major and you find things that you're like interested in, like you're
Yeah.
like, oh, this is fascinating, like this is cool. So like getting into that is when like I really, took and focused on school, because it was like I was studying things I was interested in.
So then that was more your pivot point where for education was
I mean,
in
that
college.
education was always there, because with sports you're always learning, so I
Yeah.
was always educating and always kind of doing that. But it was like, you're reading, I can't even remember the books we'd read, some of the stuff that, it's kind of like you're just checking boxes, going through these tasks.
Yep.
As a kid, I kind of understood that, but I didn't know, I would do the work. I wasn't not doing it, but it wasn't like I was showing up and doing it at my highest level, because it just didn't seem like it didn't matter. But then
Yeah.
once I got to college, and it was like these classes, and like this stuff is stuff that, you're interested in, and it's like, it opens kind of your perspective. So you want to go even deeper on it. So
Awesome.
that's, I think, where I really got more into like the personal growth side and the development side. But like, it was a cool experience in college, that little transition from school being something you had to do to something that like you really went in and went after.
Yeah. And so when you now went off to college, you were both a Pac-10 and Big 12. You were recruited by both?
I was recruited by schools all over the country. So those were like, probably, those are, I guess, maybe in media, but like
Yeah.
from my sophomore year on, I had offers to play pretty much anywhere I wanted to play. As far as schools but I was going to base my decision to play quarterback based on the school I was going
Yeah.
to go to. So um, a few Pac-10s, and Colorado out of the Big 12 was the first school to offer me. But those were like the ones that were kind of specifically at quarterback, but there was, there's some other
Mhm.
options there as well.
Yeah. And you ended up going to Boise, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And that's where you went from a quarterback position to more of a receiver.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So that's how you got that whole speed thing down, or did you always have that?
Everything's learned. You're not just born with this stuff. So
Yeah.
obviously I chose my school and college to go to play quarterback. And there's challenges, there's things that go on through the experience. And so I pivoted to play receiver. It's not like I just wanted to.
Mhm.
So I pivoted to play receiver. And then when I went to do that, because ultimately my goal is to play in the NFL. Um, when I made that pivot, obviously they had guys that they recruited from all over the country as well that played receiver by trade. So I had to acquire the skills that it was going to take. Speed was a big part of that. So I hired my own speed coach outside of the program. I did a
Okay.
lot of things on my own to advance my game. And so basically from that time in my junior year when I switched positions to receiver, that next probably year and a half, I really like had a game plan for how I was going to make that transition and really set myself up to be ready to play in the league.
Uh, so you said, you wanted to go and play in the NFL. At what age were you when you kind of figured out that that's something that really interested you, that you want to go into that lifestyle?
NFL specifically was probably in high school. As a kid, I always wanted to be a pro athlete. So probably went until I was about 10, it was the NBA. Then it went to, I wanted to be in the MLB. Um, and then just the way that sports seasons fall and with football being in the fall, I got my first recruiting letters. And, after the fall season, I was like, okay, I'm going to focus here. So I always, probably from like the time of like 7 or 8, wanted to be that pro athlete. I didn't know. I mean, the area and focus of it kind of fluctuated throughout my career because of my passions and obviously like in basketball, your size.
Yeah.
So, but like once I got that first recruiting letter, and I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on and lock in on.
Okay. That's awesome. And then, so wait, you were in the fifth round
Hmm.
for drafting,
Yep.
and you were drafted by the Chargers, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when from college into NFL, what was the big difference between training?
Um,
So, like intensity or just duration?
so in college, it was basic. So there's kind of 3 phases to it. So like college, obviously they have a program that is designing you for the season, and building you a lot of times because you're coming in at 18. So the guys that they're training are from 18 or 17 probably to 21, 22. So a lot of it's developmental, a lot of core compound lifts and things like that.
Mm.
And then once you kind of are transitioning from college into getting ready for the NFL, the volumes dramatically drops because you're trying to train for speed, obviously, with the combine and all those things. So
Yeah.
you go into a very tailored and specific speed emphasis and explosive type of training. And then after the draft, you quickly have to transition back into that training that's going to get you ready for a season and things like that. And so in the NFL with that, the duration was similar. The intensity was a lot lower as far as like in the weight room, um, a lot more tempo lifts, things like that, but less volume, not a lot on the joints, but a lot of the emphasis was more on the position specific movement on the field. So
Got it.
with off-season training, we'd be in the weight room on the field as well, but that's where they really focused and increased the volume as far as like movement, how you moved, increasing range of motion, all those things.
So one thing that has always interested me about you is all the mental side of everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
whenever we talk, you've always got a mental angle or a mental focus on why we're doing something, why you're doing something, or how to do something. So what transitioned you from being this macho guy running and doing all that stuff in the NFL to just focus on, or mainly focus on, that mental side? Because I know your handle on Instagram is Game Elevated, and you deal a lot with that mental side of sports or of thinking or of training.
Hmm.
So how did you make that transition?
I didn't make a transition after sports. That was the reason why I got to that level in sport.
Got it.
So, like I talked about playing quarterback in college, my freshman, my sophomore year before I switched positions, it was an open quarterback competition, right,
Mhm.
in spring ball. So going into the competition, they were saying that, okay, we're going to chart every throw because there's three guys competing for the spot, and at the time we were all pretty much dead even as far as like how we were performing, athleticism, all of that experience, so we were kind of all at the same place, and it's basically whoever was going to kind of take the lead, they were going to invest in.
Okay.
And so going through spring ball, we charted every, quarterback rating, completion percentage, interceptions, touchdowns, everything. And so after that spring ball, we have our kind of follow-up meetings kind of saying, okay, this is kind of what panned out and this is the action going forward. And so going into that meeting, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be the starter, or they're going to say, okay, now it's between you two. And, so I'm thinking I played well. I was leading the board on a lot of these charts, everything that they said they were measuring on. And so going into that meeting, I'm expecting to hear a certain thing. And so as the meeting kind of unfolds, my coach basically by the end of the meeting says, we're going to go with these other two guys and you're going to kind of be the third guy and, keep working and, we see what you're doing and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, I'm a sophomore in college. Like we talked about, my dream was always to be a pro athlete, and at this time, go to the NFL. And so I'm sitting there like, how am I going to go to the NFL if I'm third on the depth chart? I'm not going to have any film. I'm not able to show what I can do. I know what I can do. My
Yeah.
teammates know what I can do. There's evidence around me that is saying I have what it takes, but it's like, if I'm not given that opportunity, how can I do it? So at that time, I'm thinking, okay, my options are I transfer schools and go get that opportunity somewhere else, show what I can do, or I stick it out and wait for my opportunity. And so um, I called a school, had a scholarship lined up to go. And once I had the scholarship lined up, it was kind of like the fork in the road for me. It was like, okay, I either go this way and I don't really know what's going to happen, or I stick on this road that I've at this point started to cultivate a lot of relationships with guys. We're building something pretty good with our team. I see the program that we have. And so I was kind of tied on that side, but not selfishly, but like personal goal wise, this wasn't looking like my road. So at that time, the thing I told myself was that I wasn't going to switch schools. It wasn't, I had to look at my game and look at everything I was doing when I was trying to make this decision. I'm like, okay, I haven't been consistently playing at my highest level. There's these things that I can tweak, and so I was like, okay, if I'm going to, so I was like, I'm going to stay. But the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go all in on being the best player I can be. And if my dream to make it to the NFL doesn't happen, it's going to be because it's my fault. Not because it's the coach's fault, not because they picked somebody else, not because I didn't get my opportunity. It's going to be on me. Like that moment right there was when I decided that. And so from that point on, that's when the mental turned on. That's when you're looking at every little detail. That's when you're looking at the margins, because you're all doing the same thing. You're spending the same amount of time. You're doing the same training program. You're being coached by the same coaches. So like that's when I really started to look at the margins. Where can I win here? How can I compete? How can I beat him here? How can I beat him here? And so going through that next season, so I'm going through like, okay, I'm gonna be ready for my opportunity. Like that's the mentality I have, but in my preparation. So fast forward, we're going through the season, and at the time the quarterback's playing well, right? He's starting to get confidence. He had no experience like me. We were the same year. And so we're 4 weeks in, we're undefeated. He's starting to get confidence. He's playing well. And I'm looking like, I'm not going to get this opportunity. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's
Yeah.
balling.
Yeah.
So I'm like looking at it, fast forward 2 more weeks. I'm still doing everything I can to be ready for my opportunity. So it's bye week. We're 6-0, and I'm at the facility watching film on my same game plan, doing what I do,
Yeah.
focusing on how I can get my best, all that. So as I'm sitting there, this scout from the Dolphins comes in. He's looking for an open film room, and he kind of asks me who I am. And we're kind of chat a little bit, and he's like, "Why don't you play
Yeah.
receiver?" And I was like, "I'm a quarterback." Just like everybody else, everybody else asked me, "Why don't you play? Why don't you play safety? Why don't you play linebacker? Why don't you play tight end? Why don't?" It was always, "Why don't you play something?" But I was always a quarterback. So I told him the same thing. We kind of wrapped up a conversation. He left, and then after that, I kept having that conversation in my mind as I was going home that night. Kept having that conversation in my mind. I was like, really, my goal always was to get to the NFL. I kind of, obviously I think I can be a quarterback.
Yeah.
And I got so wrapped up in trying to prove these guys wrong and trying to show what I can do and all this stuff. And I'm like, but my goal is to go to the league. If I go to the league right here, why don't I do that? So that's when I switched positions. And then, like we talked about, kind of went all in on that with that same mentality, that same focus, all of that stuff. And, fast forward to my senior year, ended up leading the team in touchdowns. First
That's
team all,
awesome.
getting invited to the combine, which is a dream of mine. Getting drafted, which is a dream of mine. And then when I got to the NFL, it was the same thing. The year I got drafted, they drafted a guy in the first round. I was drafted in the fifth round. He got all the first looks, all the first opportunities. He was they invested a lot of money in him. So it was the same thing. I had to look at the margins. How can I beat this guy here, here, here? And so
Smart.
as a pro athlete, that's the game. Like, that's the biggest difference. It's not in the training. It's not in all that. Mindset's the game as far as like athleticism or as far as elite level
Yeah.
performance is concerned. That's what separates the elite athletes from everybody else. And so when I got to the NFL, that's what I saw. Like I remember stepping on the field that first time, and I'm looking around like, you always kind of imagine what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
So I'm like looking, okay, I'm looking like guys are the same size. Nobody's bigger than I've ever seen. Nobody's super strong. Nobody's like, there's those one or two guys, super
Mhm.
fast or whatever, but everybody's the same. But as soon as the ball snapped, how fast information is processed, the habits these dudes have, how they operate on a daily basis when nobody's around them, not a coach pushing them, but just how they operate. It's on a high level. And so like my eyes came on because I'm like, okay, I was already dialed into this mindset thing and I was already looking at this, but I'm like, okay, this is the difference. This right here that I'm seeing, this is the difference. So going through my career, obviously learning from guys, I was so lucky to play with guys that played in the Hall of Fame. I had a few of my receivers coaches were Hall of Fame players, and then were lucky to be my coach. I had coaches that won Super Bowls that played around other Hall of Fame players. So I got just exposed to all of this information. And one of my things as an athlete, as a person in life, is to be a sponge. Like, if there's somebody that has information around you, I'm soaking that thing up. I'm asking those questions. I'm getting that information. So like, as I kind of went through my career and I saw these same patterns, those were the things that I added to my game that I kind of already had, but it kind of just elevated me to another level to add these things from other people that were doing it at an even higher level than me. And so now, like, as far as athletes are concerned, that's the game. Like, a lot
Yeah.
of these young athletes, they're focused on playing all these sports or playing that one sport and focusing on that and training with this trainer and playing for the best team over here and all that. And it's like, oh, that's great. Don't get me wrong. There
Yeah.
is a certain time and place for all that. But at the end of the day, if you're not developing and conditioning your mindset, like you're conditioning your skills, conditioning your body, when it comes to that point when you're competing against that athlete that's just as good as you, that maybe he's even more naturally talented than you, how are you going to create that advantage for yourself? How are you going to compete? And so like, that's nowadays, like, that's competition on the high school level. A lot of these high school level,
Yeah.
like, that's the competition. But on the college level, that's what it is. On the pro level, that's what it is. The best players in the world. So you have to figure out how you're going to create that advantage for yourself. And a lot of athletes, they don't condition their mindset like that. So that moment comes and they try to rise to the moment, but they're not conditioned for the moment. And so there's a
Yeah,
difference there.
I've seen that. I help at a couple of the high schools around here, and strength training wise, and you see these kids that are just working, and then they train at school. They've got private trainers, they've got specialist speed agility specialists, but no one. And what I've always liked about you is that you do that mental side, and you're always preaching it, and nobody's doing that for them. And that's one thing that I think drew me to you, because you can do all the other stuff, but at what point is everyone just the same at whether it's high school, college, or pro. The difference between speed is a fraction of a second.
Right.
But it's that whole mental side which makes all the difference. And that's what I try and teach my clients is that, you can be lifting all this weight. You could be the strongest guy out there, but if you don't have that mental fortitude, you're going to be behind. So
100%.
that's one thing I really
100%.
like about what you do. Um, and so is that part of what motivated you into helping the younger generation at an earlier age, say the high school level?
Yeah, a lot of athletes that I've seen firsthand here in San Diego, like anytime I go to a camp or I go to a high school football game, you see all these athletes out there that have the talent, have the size, have
Yeah.
everything, and you're like, okay, well, who's this guy? And they're like, oh, well, nobody's recruiting him, nobody knows about him, and it's like, what? And
Yeah.
so then you really start to look, and it's like, okay, well, if that's the circumstance, which a lot of times it is for a lot of athletes, how are you going to get yourself seen? How are you going to be proactive about that? Because if you're sitting on the couch waiting because you're working hard or because you have these stats, it's not going to happen for you like that. You have to kind of create that for yourself.
Yeah.
So where I focus on with my athletes is, on the training side, I focus on any athlete that wants to get better, like developing them there. But where my expertise is with that athlete that wants to play at their highest level. So if you're 9 years old and we're like me and want to be that pro athlete, we need to start
Mhm.
conditioning your mindset to start creating your advantage. So on every level, you're doing that from there on out. If you're a high school athlete, that now you're like, okay, I want to play college ball. Whatever it is,
Yeah.
let's get it going. Let's get your mindset right, because that's what's going to be the thing that creates that difference for you.
So would that be well, the next question that I wanted to ask was, what would be three things that you would have taught yourself at a young age that you know now, but definitely that the mindset is
The
maybe the
game
biggest thing.
mindset is the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, everyone is, and this very well, is that a lot of athletes, even at 8, 7, 9 years old, are specializing in a sport, in a position. I don't like that. I think you need the diversity to improve your athletic capability and your mindset on how things move and how your body moves under different circumstances. So, and you were a multi-athlete in high school. And is your training, do you still push a variety of sports for kids to go and play a variety of sports? Or do you think the industry has changed so much that now you have to get specialized at a younger age?
Well, a couple things. So there's a study out there actually about the percentage of pro athletes that played
Yeah,
multi-sports, and a lot of
yeah,
them did.
it's huge.
But as far as like the multi-sport thing, I don't push my agenda on people. If they ask my advice, I'll give my advice. But
Yeah,
the multi-sport thing is so crucial, because not only do you have to learn the different skills in the different sports, which obviously enhances your overall athleticism, but it teaches you how you have to learn to compete and play different roles on different teams. So
yes.
like maybe like, okay, I'm the baller on the football field, but on basketball I'm the sixth guy. I'm
Uh-huh.
I'm the sixth man, so I have to come in and I have to contribute another way. Or in baseball, I have to contribute another way, or I have to figure out how I'm going to contribute. So like there's all those other factors that are so beneficial playing multi-sports. At the same time now, like a lot of it is specialized. So I
Yeah.
think there is a time and a place to be specialized. But I think if you're going to specialize, I still think that you need to have that off season for yourself. When it's maybe you're training year round in one sport, but maybe because this is your off season, you're focusing on these specific things and you're not focused on results as far as win loss. So
Yeah.
like there's those developmental times, whether you're specializing playing multi-sport or not, that you need to be, optimizing your athleticism. And if you're just focused on playing, training one way or training year round and doing a specific thing, that's what I don't like about specialization.
Yeah. And I've also noticed that, well, there's been a ton of specialization. And again, it goes all the way down to 7 years old, especially that I've seen in San Diego with some of my clients. And, I deal more with the injury side. and getting people recovered and getting them healed in order to go and compete again. But I've noticed a huge amount of that where they're doing a lot of compound lifts at a very young age. They're not working so much on just natural running and jumping and lateral motion. They're working with weights the whole time. And I'm not a big fan of it. I think we need a lot more work on us before we start putting additional weights and external forces on us. But I've seen some of your videos on Instagram, and I really like them on the mobility side that you're doing with the running and the jumping and the lateral motion. So is that something that you like to incorporate into all of your athletes?
Yeah, I think that the higher level that I got up, the more they focused on kind of stripping down the weight and focusing on your movement patterns, focusing on the movement
Yes.
or the muscle firing patterns. Are you even moving properly? Like, yeah, you're naturally strong, or you're fast, or you're doing all that already. But look at all these deficiencies right here. Let's focus on these. So kind of with going through that process as an athlete. Now I try to expose athletes to that earlier, because if you're able to build that base and get those things proper before you start adding the weight's just going to be even that much more when you throw it on. The weight won't even need to be that much more, because you're going to be more efficient with your training. So there's so many less injuries, all of that stuff. So I think it's key.
Yeah, I me, I 100% agree with all of what you just said. So switching gears a little, so obviously we are all quarantined. We're all at home now for this COVID-19. And two things. I want to know, what are you doing to stay both physically and mentally on point during this time? And what are you getting your young athletes to do?
So what I'm doing is I'm trying to use the time to what I call level up, get better, improve, get to those things that I wasn't getting to, all of that stuff. So I think as far as like the physical part, that for me is easy, because like that's one of the things that really sets the tempo for kind of how I go about my day. And it really just kind of, I think that, outside of training for athletics, I think that just working out in general is so much more beneficial than the aesthetic that you see. So as far as like that part, it's just a part of my routine, as far as getting my brain to think a certain way, to feel a certain way, to do that. So I keep that up no matter what's going on.
Awesome.
But as far as like I think the mental part is the part that is the struggle for a lot of people, and the thing that I've kind of struggled with through it. Not necessarily mental, like with myself, but as far as like, I know that, when we have places to be, when we have those calendar blocks, it kind of can dictate how we operate and how we do things. And so I know that probably about 2.5 weeks in, I'm an early workout guy, get it in, sets the tempo for my day, and I get about my business. But one thing I was doing was I was waking up, I was, focusing on my work and doing stuff. And then let me get my workout midday and things like that. And it was like, I'd noticed that, my days weren't as optimized. So, just really trying to focus on keeping those habits that I have, as far as like my routines is more as regular as I can, trying to do that. And then just finding ways to be proactive and productive. This is, it obviously is not ideal situation, but it's honestly one of the greatest benefits that we've all had if we use it properly. Like, everybody's on pause. It's not just one industry or one business or one person. It's like everybody's on pause. So it's like, it's a chance for you to be able to focus on certain things without falling behind. So I think it's huge. Go ahead.
I just, on what you're saying, I 100% agree. I found that during this time, I had a week or two where just like you, we had our blocks in our day, and I knew what I was doing at 5 o'clock, 5 a.m. because I'd see you at the gym, and then you go to work and you have your day planned out. And I started sleeping in a little bit. I was doing my workouts later on in the day, staying up later, so I was
Mm-hmm.
completely off. But then I listened to one of your things, and I was like, okay. So I woke up early, do a little workout, and I started, well, number one, feeling better, but also I started figuring out all of the things that I've wanted to do for so long, but never had the time to do. So I got some studying in, I learned some new things, and just doing a lot more me work in this time because I have the time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it's absolutely awesome.
And I see you.
Uh,
I see you elevating the digital game too in this time.
oh, you know what? I'm trying. It's always been a passion of mine. I've always wanted to meet people, interview them, listen to their stories, find out what makes them tick, see how more people can learn from them. And you're the first one that came to mind. So I thought, hey, I'm gonna give you a shout and see what you say.
Nice,
So
nice.
thank you. All right, I got three questions. Nice, quick questions that I want is what is your favorite quote? If you had one quote, what would it be?
Grind till you shine.
And who said that?
I don't know if it's a famous quote or anything like that, but it's something that
Grind till you
when I
shine.
when I was playing in San Diego, somebody it was a guy we were both kind of working our way up, trying to create our opportunity, and
Yeah.
like that was kind of our thing, our little thing. Got to grind till you shine, So like we just that was kind of our
Okay.
little mantra that we had going.
We'll just put an LA next to that one.
Yeah, yeah. I'll take credit for that one.
Yeah. Mine is from actually Walt Disney, is keep moving forward. So, like, you're going to screw up in life. We all do. We all make mistakes. We all fall off the bike. You just got to get back on and keep moving forward. So,
Walt Disney's big time because obviously he was fired because he didn't have a
yep.
creativity. So a
Yeah.
lot of times not only do we fall off on our own, but a lot of times people will tell us no, or that door will close, or that opportunity won't seem like it's there. We're putting in the work and we don't see the result in front of us. And so I
Yeah.
think like that kind of hits on that too. Like, keep moving forward. If that's what your passion is, if that's what you want, just keep moving forward.
Absolutely. Because so many of us, there's so many obstacles where you can just quit and say, well, it's too damn hard, so I'm going to
Hmm.
stop, or I'm not good enough, or so and so is quicker than me or smarter than me. It doesn't matter. If you keep grinding and learning one thing every day, you're going to get there. It might be a little bit later, but it doesn't matter. You'll
Right.
get there. All right. Favorite movie?
Mm. I don't watch a lot of movies.
No?
No,
Come on. No
I don't
favorite
want.
movie? All right. Okay. So the next one actually comes from the favorite movie, but if you had a superpower, what would that superpower be?
Flying.
Flying.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't expect that one. I thought like speed or mental focus.
It would be, it would be a superpower, something that's like not real. So it'd either be
Yeah.
like flying or it'd be invisibility or something.
You'd get in trouble for that one. All right. It was so awesome just doing this little bit with you. I really enjoyed it, learned a lot. And I'm sure a lot of my clients are going to just get a little different side of the whole mental and uh, aspect in sports and in physical activity.
Right.
But if they want anything more, they can always contact you through Game Elevated.
Yep. At
Yep.
Game Elevated, it's my social handle.
Yeah.
GameElevated.com is the website. But yeah, a lot of stuff is on Game Elevated. I try to do stuff daily just to kind of make you think, give you a little motivation, and a little personal growth.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eli. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, bud. Cheers.